Everybody, welcome back to another episode of the Wisconsin Investor. Today, I have the honor of bringing on one of our teammates here at Wisconsin Discount Properties, Connor Derenne. So we're going to get into our little commercial we always do for Wisconsin Discount Properties. Before we do today, though, we give you a little background on Connor. Connor, today's episode, guys, is going to be fire because Connor just got his first property and he's been out of college. They got it less than a year out of college. And so for you that are experienced listening to today's episode, don't turn it off. Don't leave this episode because you're like, oh, I can't learn from a guy who just got his first deal, right? A lot of times when I talk to the younger folks, I learn so much from them, especially like new people. I learn a ton. Like, how did you get these? Sometimes we forget that as we get a little bit older. So those of you that have done a ton of deals and you're like, man, I can't learn from a rookie here, hang on, because I think today's episode is going to be fire. Now, for our sponsor, Wisconsin Discount Properties is our sponsor of today's episode, and I'm going to let Connor do a little commercial for a deal that was out to our buyers list. And Connor, I believe nobody put an offer in on this besides you. Is that true?
Yeah, that's correct. Yeah, no one put an offer in on it. Ended up throwing a bid out there for 245. I was all in on it after closing costs and everything, about 19,000. Ended up the appraisal came back at 290, so I had about 30K of equity, day one, which was awesome.
Wow! So just by buying it, basically, you threw 30K of equity to your personal financial statement, your net worth, day one buying it. That's
Yep.
pretty cool. Awesome. Guys, we have deals like that every single week at Wisconsin Discount Properties. If you're not on the buyer's list and you're like, man, I can't find any deals, there's no good deals out there, get on our buyer's list for God's sakes. Go to wisconsindiscountproperties.com, put your information in. It's really simple. It's going to take less than 2 minutes, and you're going to add it to our buyer's list where we send out an email and text a couple times a week with updates on the deals. Offers are due by Thursday at 1 o'clock, so you get a little time to do your due diligence there. We have inspection reports in there. We have video walkthroughs. We've got any other kind of information we can find out about the properties. A lot of times we'll get quotes on some bigger ticket items if that needs repairs, and you're welcome to use those vendors. We have lenders that we can connect you with. So there's a ton of resources that we add besides just sending you out deals. So I highly encourage you, if you're not on the list, get on a buyer's list and quit missing out on 30K equity to your bottom line.
Yeah, and you get to talk to some cool people like me. So
shoot, you get to talk to cool people like Connor. So Connor, let's get into today's episode. We're going to break this deal down a little bit today. And I don't know where this conversation is going to go, folks. I never do when we do these. And so with Connor being newer, we may turn this into more of like a coaching call as well. And this is something that Connor does with people every day, even though he's newer. He's around myself, Reese, a bunch of other people in our office who are investors. He talks to investors literally every day about exactly this, helping them get started in real estate or helping them grow where they're at and achieve their goals. And so I do this a lot with our team as well, internally for those that work here. And so depending on where the conversation goes, we may end up letting Connor ask some questions about his own current position and get him going. But Connor, just like I said earlier, just graduated college last year from Milwaukee, I believe. Is that true?
Yep. UWM, baby.
And what, like a week or two after that, started with us?
Yeah. I had a part-time job my senior year of college, and I was working that, graduated, put my 2 weeks in, and I think it was right around this time. It's actually my year today. So
it's your 1 year
Memorial Day weekend. So I had a nice 3-day break from work and school and started right up with you guys.
Yeah. I think the first day I took him golfing too for the REI Success meeting. He got to come golfing prior to me, which was a lot of fun. Good way to break him in right away. He had to show me up on the golf course, but
just a little bit, Corey.
A little bit. Well, let's talk a little bit about this, Connor, because I think what these are always interesting to me. There's a lot of people who have limiting beliefs out there, right? Of like, oh, I can't do real estate because X, Y, Z, right?
Mm-hmm.
One of the excuses could be that I just graduated college and I don't have a bunch of money saved up, right? I'm still paying off my student loans or whatever the case is. How did you make this happen within a year of graduating from college?
Yeah, no, it's kind of funny because I honestly, I didn't really find real estate until my last semester of college. So I was going to school. I started out wanting to be an accountant, and then I was like, okay, numbers are cool. I need to talk to people. I can't sit behind a desk and just crunch numbers all day. Yeah. So that led me to finance, which then eventually I was like, okay, finance is cool, but it's a little too serious. I want to be a financial advisor. I'm like, it's a little too serious for me. I want real people that have just as much, effort and motivation to succeed, and use their money. So ended up taking a real estate finance class, and I was like, wow, there is a lot of money that you can make, being an investor. And, I was going to Milwaukee, like you said, and, rent in Milwaukee is not cheap. So I was like, I'm basically paying a mortgage here, paying rent. And that's kind of what got
Yeah.
me into it. But yeah, so I guess, Corey, what was the question again? I just got so excited about telling about, how I got into real estate.
Well, like, how did you make this happen? Because like your excuse could be like, man, I don't have a lot of money. I don't have this. I just got out of college. I got student loans, whatever. Like, how did you go
Mm-hmm.
from like just graduating college, discovering really real estate was an area you wanted to be in, to all of a sudden now, less than a year out of college, you've got your first investment property?
Yeah. So it all started with, you graduate, you don't have a lot of money, you have debt, right?
Mm,
It's kind of weighing those options too. So my student loans, I'm paying, 2.5 to 3.5% interest, which is, it's not a lot. So, those are really good loans, but
yeah.
I kind of look at them and I'm thinking, I could have paid them off right after college. I had enough money to pay off my student loans. Um, but, I would rather, put my money elsewhere where I can make, 7, 8%. And, now I'm paying that 3%, and I'm also making 5% on top of it. So
Yes.
that was kind of, my mindset is, I can make more money than I'd be paying in interest. So,
Hmm.
that kind of went in my back pocket, just making my minimum payments, still doing that. But, I'm still a broke college kid. So now it's about getting creative, putting yourself out there. And that's actually where you came in, Corey. You told me about, your first deal and how you went to your mom and, used your resources and your connections.
Yep.
So I actually went to my dad. Told him my idea, my plan, and he was on board, which was awesome. It's nice when, you can go to someone, but with that being said, there's got to be a benefit to them.
For
It's
sure.
not like, hey, can I borrow money? And I'm just going to use it now. Now you gotta sweeten the pot for both people. So,
Yeah. Yeah. So what was that? I think let's go down that road a little bit, Connor, with the conversation with your dad, because at the time we're recording this, we just had an REI Success Club meeting last night. Great conversations I got to have with people afterwards and did some networking. And some of the folks in there, that's like where they're getting stuck right now, is like, how do
mm-hmm,
you have that conversation with your family? And then how do you educate them? Because a lot of people, they think real estate's cool, but also for them, it's risky, like to go,
mm-hmm,
in their mind, to go throw money into, a lot of times when you're raising private money, it's going to be from your immediate network. It's people who know, like, and trust you, that you've built a reputation over time with them, that sort of thing. But it's still like, you're still asking them to throw a good chunk of cash probably at it. So like, how do you educate somebody who's maybe not in it every day, like you or I, or
mm-hmm.
is got cash, they're interested in making a return, but you got to overcome their fear of losing that money? What was that conversation like for you and your dad?
Yeah, no, it was interesting because honestly, he was just all in.
Okay.
And a lot of people are kind of a little hesitant, but
Yeah.
for him, he also had some goals. So he wanted some extra money for retirement, and that's kind of where I came in. I kind of found his need similar to like what you're doing. Like, what are your goals? Where do you want to be? You can kind of do that with the people that you're trying to get money from. Or help them invest too. There's a lot of people, a lot of family members, a lot of friends that have a bunch of money just sitting in their house, sitting in their bank account, and it just it's not working for them. It's just kind of sitting there. So just bringing that up and showing them the potential, but also back to what you said, they're going to be hesitant. Some people are going to be worried about losing their money. My favorite thing you showed me was that one chart of, I think it was like the last 76 years of real estate.
Mm-hmm.
And what was it? The market only went down 4 years in the last 76, and
Yeah,
two
I
of
think it's
those were '08 and '09.
six total
Six
years,
total.
and four of them were '08 to 2012.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So I love showing people that. I showed my dad that right away. And then, just getting them comfortable with the numbers and, making them understand what you're looking at also helps a lot too. Being professional, coming in there prepared and not
Mm-hmm.
just, asking for money and expecting it. You
Yeah.
kind of have to have a game plan, goals, all that fun stuff. You can't just, go in there and expect them to hand you, $20,000 to go get your first deal.
Yeah, that's so good. Tony Breuer, who's been on the podcast before, and a lot of folks in our network know Tony well. One of the things he talked about last night when this question came up was when they started out, they, had just, it's really about telling people, first of all, what you do. So when people like, if you're an accountant, you're a teacher, you're anything else, but people want to know what you do and you want to be in real estate, it's saying, well, yeah, I'm in real estate. I'm a landlord, or I flip houses, and I'm also a teacher on the side. So letting people know that, or just by, like we talk about, share this podcast on your social media. that lets people know, oh, this person's in real estate, right? And it starts that conversation. But then when it comes down to like, okay, cool, I got a fish on the hook. How do I reel them in? Right. It's
Yeah.
what Tony talked about. What they used to do is they made up this cheesy, it was kind of cheesy now that they look back at it, but it was professional and it talked a little bit about them, their background, real estate, the numbers, that kind of thing. And they would bring in, this pamphlet type of a thing or this booklet, and they would sit down and get coffee or, a drink or two with whoever it was that was interested and go through a little bit of that information and just educating people a little bit on who, because really they're investing in you. So they have to feel
Yes.
comfortable with you and that you know what you're doing. And I think, coming in there and being serious, even though it's your dad, you could just be casual about
Yeah.
it, but coming in and being prepared and serious, I think is a huge, huge lesson for people to take away from this
Yeah.
if they're trying to raise some private money.
Absolutely. And, especially when you're working with family, defining your roles early is huge. When I sat down with my dad, it wasn't, let's just do this. It was it took a little bit. You saw it, Corey,
Yeah.
there was a couple deals that I wanted to jump on, but we just weren't quite there as partners. And it made more sense to me to, value my relationship with my father than, jump into a deal and have it get messy on us. So,
Yeah.
that was kind of the first step, getting him on board with the money, and then also, defining the steps and making sure we're both comfortable. Because in my head, I was ready to roll, and then all of a sudden, he was like, "What about this?" And you kind of got to step back and be like, "Okay, yes, there's two people here. It's not just me." So, what are your objections and what are your main concerns?
That is so good. Yeah, you guys, I think for a while it was really just a lot of back and forth, and you guys just had to finally, if I remember correctly, correct me if I'm wrong, but you guys had to just like sit down and like hash it out one day and just come up with exactly what the expectation was, what his goals were, how you guys were going to structure that private money, and what was the upside for him, what was the benefit to you, who was responsible for what, kind of laid it all out. So
exactly.
I think that's so good. And what I love, Connor, is what if you don't mind sharing the agreement you guys have and how you guys structured this, because there's a million different ways to do private money raising. So if you don't mind sharing the how you guys structured it, maybe that'll be helpful for some of the audience.
Yeah, I got a smoking deal from my dad. So this is very,
this is the nice part about working with some family.
Yes. So we agreed to, it was just, basically 50-50 on everything, except he didn't want any of the equity. So he just wanted to help me get started. And then, once he retired, when that would be, I would basically pay him out on what he had in on the business with, interest on it. So we were looking at anywhere from, about 10, 12%. But that didn't start until, he retired. But now that we are, getting into it, I told him my goals, Corey, and I don't even think I shared this with you yet. So, we had my goals. I kind of share it with everyone is $50 in the next 7 years. So I kind of walked him through the numbers, and, I was looking at, I think, $200 per door. So about 120,000 of, passive income, quote unquote, for the year. So I shared this with my dad, and he's like, why don't we just double it? Let's not worry about, why don't we just double this goal? And instead of you, paying me out when I retire, we just double it. And then he still doesn't really want a lot of the equity. He just wants to at least have a couple of the properties go. I have 6 siblings, so he wants to at least help them out too. So we're still working on that part of it, but we're actually adjusting our goals, which is pretty cool considering
that's awesome, dude.
We're one property in, and we're already looking to catapult it even more than we originally had.
I love that. So you went from like, let's get a reasonable goal, 50 doors in 7 years, to now we're doing 100 doors in 7 years. I love that, man. That's awesome. Well, that's the power of getting around people who can push you too, right? Like your dad is pushing you, but he's, that also is probably instilling some confidence in you that like, wow, he believes in me enough that he wants to double this goal.
Yes. It's funny that you say that, Corey, because that was actually, I think that was one of my biggest hurdles working with my dad is, when you're younger, it's someone you go to for advice. Everything, is like, Dad, what do I do? And all of a sudden it turned to him being like, dude, you got it. Like, I trust you. And I felt like he wasn't asking me enough questions.
Yeah.
And he like, that was kind of my value add though. I'm the one finding the deals, doing the numbers, doing all the nitty gritty stuff. He's the money guy. Right.
Yeah.
So it was interesting for me to get over that hurdle of, okay, he trusts me, but I also wanted him to know what I was doing. So finding that balance between, okay, I'm glad you trust me, but let's reel it back a little bit and make sure you understand what I'm doing as well.
Yeah, which I think is helpful because you don't want to get to a point where then there's resentment later if he didn't fully understand the attack plan or the, what exactly you were doing. It's great that he's confident in you, but I think that's really smart and wise of you to sit down and go, okay, thanks, Dad.
Yeah.
But let's just so you understand what we're doing here and just fully disclose. And I think that's also a really important point for like when we're raising private money from people. A lot of times, if people don't have a lot of cash, maybe it's a smaller amount, a $25,000 or $50,000, they can't cover the purchase price, but they can cover some rehab or down payment. Um, I'm fully disclosing them, but they're going to be in a junior lien position. So for those of you guys that don't know what that means, the bank is always going to want to be in first lien position, meaning if they have to foreclose, they get first rights on that thing. They get paid first, right? Any of their losses get taken care of if there's enough equity and so on and so forth. But if you have a junior lien position, you get to then foreclose after the first lien position takes their chunk. So it's a riskier position. And so I make sure when I'm telling people about this, they fully understand, hey, you're in a riskier position. You don't have enough capital to be in first lien position. I can get you a return, but you're going to be in second lien position. Now, they're insured on the property. So if it burns down, they're covered there. Like again, it comes back to the relationship. Like I'm never going to not pay somebody back, right? Like people who know me know that. But it's sitting down and making sure you're fully disclosing all of the risks, all of the things, because it is an investment. It's like any investment, there's risk. It's not a guaranteed return on the money. Stuff happens in this world, and they have to be okay understanding there's a potential you may not get your money back. And so they have to know that stuff. Again, I think it's a very small percent, but that is something to make sure people understand. This is not some guarantee this is going to work out kind of a thing.
If it was
So
guaranteed, everyone would do it, right, Corey?
that's right. That's right. It's funny because Tony and I were talking about this last night, and sometimes uh, when we talk about HELOCs all the time. He's a big proponent of HELOC. I'm a big proponent of HELOCs. And for those that don't know, that's a home equity line of credit. It's a wonderful vehicle to use for real estate investing. And some people are like, "Oh, that's too risky. I don't want to risk my house." Right. And then it's like, but then they'll go to a lender like Tony and say, "Hey, can I have 65% of that ARV?" And he's like, "Oh, okay. So you're okay risking my money, but not your own money?" Well, if it was so risky, why are you borrowing money from anybody? Right. Apparently you don't think it's so risky that you're not willing to borrow money from somebody. So it's to help. And again, there's a lot of factors that go into why people don't feel comfortable using a HELOC. There's some PTSD from '08 for people, stuff like that. But ultimately, if you're comfortable enough taking a loan from a bank or a private lender, you should be comfortable enough to take a HELOC and put your own skin in the game on
Hmm.
these
I feel like
investments.
a lot of people too don't understand the HELOC as well as people like you and me and investors. I feel like they're safe. They're feeling safe with all the equity in that property. It feels less
Yeah.
risky to them. But going back to what I said earlier, there's people that have this money sitting there and it's not working for them. So
Mm-hmm.
find people with HELOCs. Find people that are willing to talk about it and don't want their money just sitting there burning a hole in their pocket and not doing anything.
For sure. And HELOCs, there's a lot of great rates out there for HELOCs. Another thing I think this is interesting. I love having conversations with buyers or investors out there because I learn a lot of what people. I assume everybody knows all this stuff, right? And a lot of people just don't know things. Well, HELOCs, there's a lot of lenders out there that will take a junior lien position, a second lien position, on a HELOC, and they don't need to have first position on the mortgage. So sometimes when you go to a lender, they're gonna say, "Oh, great, I'll give you a HELOC, but I want that first loan." Right? They want that they want the big chunk of collateral. But there's a lot of them when it comes to primary residence HELOCs. They'll take second position and they don't need to have the mortgage on it. So if you have a 3% rate or 3.5 or whatever, and you don't want to mess with it, you can still go get a HELOC from a different bank if your bank is not willing to do. Like if you're with Mr. Cooper or some of these big boys out there, your mortgage got sold off on the secondary market, and you don't have a relationship with the bank. There's still other banks out there that are doing this. Like I have one. I have a HELOC on our house. Right, I just lend it out, so I arbitrage it. And what I'm doing basically, Connor, is like what you're doing is you're saying, hey, instead of paying my student loan off at 3%, I'm going to arbitrage that. I'm going to just keep making the minimum payment over here, and I'm going to take that other chunk I'm not using to pay off that loan, and I'm going to go make 7, 8, 9, 10, twelve
Yep.
percent right? I do the same thing with the HELOC, so I put it into an investment where I'm making 10%, and the HELOC is locked in for the next 12 months at 6.5%. So I'm making a 3.5% spread. It's not life changing money, right? But it's money that's just dead in my house. It's just sitting there in my house. I can't use it if I don't use it. So you can do that with real estate. You can lock it in at 6.5%. You can go lend it out as a private money lender for 12% to Connor, and you're
Yeah.
going to make that little spread, right? So it's not, the risk is Connor flies to Tijuana and blows it all on cocaines and strippers, and you're stuck with whatever. But then you get a house. So that's the other thing. Like you get to foreclose on it, and you get that property. So it's really, the risk is pretty minimal when you're looking at private lenders. And this is all stuff to make sure you're educating your private lenders on is, hey, if I fly to Tijuana and blow it on cocaine and strippers, you get this property, and I'm going to have already put money into it. You're not you've got some equity here, all that kind of stuff. So I think that's a really wise thing you're doing, Connor, educating your dad on everything with it.
Yeah, absolutely.
So going back to the goals thing for you, what was it about the 50 doors or the 100 doors? Why was that important to you? And when you were starting to think about the future, because you have one door or 2 doors now.
Yeah.
Right.
2 doors technically. Yeah.
So, for some people that could seem like an impossible goal to go from 2 doors to 50, now 100. Why is that important to you? And how do you then make sense of that as you work backwards and start to build a plan of the more immediate future?
Absolutely. Well, it'll come back to time for me. So, I'm a big family guy. For anyone that knows me, I just love spending time with my family. I like doing my own thing too. I love working for you, Corey. Don't get me wrong. But, when I'm, 30 to 40 years old, if I don't have to work, I'm kind of the guy that's always going to want to work or at least do something. Yeah. But I want to have that option and that capability to kind of decide, where I want to be and when I want to be there. That's kind of what started it is, I want that freedom one day. My dad had a good job where his bosses kind of let him, didn't miss our games, didn't miss all our sporting events. He was able to be there for us. And, I want something like that. And not that I can't do that here, 100% can. But it's just nice knowing that it's my time and I get to decide when and where I want to use that time.
Yeah, for sure.
So that's kind of where it all started for me, was just getting that time. As for goals, that actually helped me a lot with that, Corey, because, when I first started, I think even probably back in December when we were making our yearly goals at our annual meeting, I think my goal was to be in a position to put an offer in by June.
Yeah.
Like that was my goal, just to be in a position to put an offer in. And here I am, almost closed on my property for a month now, and it's May. So I didn't even think, getting a duplex this year was possible, which is crazy because I work here and I know it. It just, getting past that fear. I guess I'll kind of circle back too. A big part of being able to get where I am and, out of college, less than 1 year out of college, getting a property, it all comes to networking. Talking to people and just building that confidence and learning from their mistakes. And the one thing I think that really motivated me too is if you talk to anyone that's been investing for the longest amount of time, it doesn't matter how long. What do they always say, Corey?
Best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago. Next best time is today.
Exactly. Everyone's always saying, you did. Everyone's always saying, I wish I would have started when I was younger. I wish I would have started when I was your age. So, that kind of sits in the back of your head too. Like, I am my age. I can start now. Just go for it. And I think I was telling you this earlier too, Corey, is, when my offer got accepted, there was about, a 2 hour, 3 hour, window where you just kind of get a little nervous, right?
Oh, yeah. You want to sabotage yourself for sure.
Yes, you do. Yes. You want to just kind of fall back and be like, all right, someone else can have this deal, take it over.
Sure nobody else wanted it more than you?
What? You sure I was? But you kind of just all of a sudden get that mindset, when you're surrounded by people, especially that, you feel have your back, or at least know someone that are able to help you out. And I just finally told myself, like, I'm going to figure it out no matter what. Yeah. No matter what happens, I'm going to figure it out. So, and I think Tony said this yesterday, it's all about, failing forward. Yeah. So the biggest mistake you can make is honestly just not taking that first step.
For sure. Just sitting on your heels, 100%. And going back to the networking thing, I talk about this for all you guys that listen to all these episodes. Thank you, by the way. I think every episode we talk about HELOCs probably, and we talk about networking. And sorry if we just keep beating a dead drum, but that is just so important, like the networking piece of it. And again, I remember my first deal. I shared this on a few episodes. I got the seller. I was working direct to seller, and the seller accepted my offer. And I was like, I called Tony actually, and I was like, dude, and I was trying to do the burst strategy because I had like $8,000 to my name. And I was like, man, what happens if this appraisal comes in low afterwards? Like, what am I going to do? Whatever. And he just kind of talked me off the ledge a little bit and calmed me down. I was like, dude, so what? Then you don't have 20% into the deal. Figure it out. You'll figure it out. You're a smart guy. Yep. You'll figure it out. And I was like, okay, you're right. I'll figure it out. But it is interesting. Like after that first offer, even to this day, when I get some, I'm still like, oh, now the work starts. Like it's fun making the offer and getting the adrenaline rush, but then it's like now I have to do more work. So
Yeah.
anyway, yeah, that's an interesting fact. Um, Last night we had some folks at the meeting, and I think what another piece of the networking thing, Connor, that's so important for you guys to make sure you're getting out to. There's caffeine and cash flow around the state. There's RIA meetings. There's REI success meeting. Get to these things because there's people there that they're buying properties, they're doing it, but they're all doing it on their own. And when they come there's so many different strategies, like the BRRRR strategy. You can grow from. That's how we went from 0 to 100 doors in 3 years. We used the BRRRR strategy, and if I never would have known about the BRRRR strategy, I would still be trying to find properties, put 20% down, and trudging along. I'd probably have like 10 doors, maybe 20 doors at this point. Not that could be a bad thing. I'd have a good amount of equity, but it would just take forever to accumulate that amount of cash, right? To be able to grow as quickly as I wanted to grow. So for you, Connor, is that what you're looking at when you say 100 doors? Is that the strategy for you? You're going to utilize the BRRRR strategy and try to accelerate the growth, utilize leverage, that sort of
Yep.
thing.
Yep.
Awesome.
Utilize leverage. I'm going to mix some flips in there, obviously, as well to build some capital, just to kind of grow as fast as I can and keep it rolling. That's, I guess, a good question for you is, Corey, this is, I think my new hurdle is, I want to grow fast, but how fast is too fast? And where do you fit that comfortability point in? Because, obviously, if I don't grow fast enough, I'm going to be nice and comfortable. If I grow too
Yes.
fast, I'm going to be, overwhelmed. It's not going to be fun anymore.
Yeah.
But obviously you want to be nervous. You want to have that feeling that you need to keep working. So where is that sweet spot of, all right, am I working too hard or am I not working hard enough?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. I think that's an individual question for every single person out there, right? Like you have to ask yourself, like for me, one of the things I looked at it was like, what was my reason for doing real estate? And so I think for everybody out there, if you're like, man, I really want to do real estate, like it seems fun, but then really get to the core, and it's kind of cliche now, Simon Sinek, start with why, all that kind of stuff. But it really is true. Like if you really think about your why is pretty strong. You want to have time freedom, and you're envisioning a future family, and you want to be able to go to the kids' ball games and blah, 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 have freedom of choice, right? Like you could still work, but you want to be able to have that choice of like where you work, right? I think that's really important that you clearly define that. I think you've been that way since you started. You've been
Mm-hmm.
really clear on that goal. So for those of you out there listening, if you haven't really sat down and clearly defined why you want to do real estate, it's going to be really tough for you to accelerate your growth at a fast rate. You're going to just be comfortable. You're going to be, I don't want to say complacent, because if you're buying deals, you're not really complacent, or you wouldn't do real estate, but you're not going to have the intensity level to grow quickly. For me, I liked what I did at my previous job. I enjoyed the people I worked with. I enjoyed the company. It was good company. But my daughter was, I think she was 3 when I started, maybe started sniffing around. Maybe she was 4. And she was she was doing like ballet dance stuff. And my job at the time, I worked nights and weekends and holidays. So I had to like call families when they were home. And that's nights, weekends, and holidays. And I was like, the schedule stinks. Like, I don't like this because I can't, like, my daughter's now in stuff, and I can't go watch her do her dance thing, or I have to ask off for it, which was always annoying.
Mm-hmm.
I'm very unemployable. So when I have to ask permission from people to do stuff, it's really hard for me to justify that. Um, so what I realized was like, I need to get out of this career and into my own thing as quickly as possible. And we'd been doing network marketing for several years. Um, but I was like, this is not going to get me out of my job fast enough. And so I started looking into doing real estate investing. And I was like, I need to get 100 doors cash flowing $200 a month as quickly as humanly possible so that I can be free and be able to be at my daughter's stuff. So that was really the key motivator for me, was like, I know I've only got 18 years with this girl, and at some point she's going to fly the coop. Maybe not even 18. Like by the time she's 15 or 16, she might not think dad's cool anymore. So
Should I be sick of you by then?
she might, yeah, she's 12 now, and she's already kind of getting that way, but no, she's great. So like for me, I think that's really important for anybody listening out there, is make sure you get really clearly defined on the goals. And then if it's intense enough, like my intensity level to get out of my job was like an 8 or 9. meaning like I'm willing to do just about anything and
Mm-hmm.
work as many hours as I have to work and sacrifice in the short term so that I can have the long term freedom. That's what helped me determine really like getting there, and then how much leverage was I willing to take on to get there? Like I was like, I'll risk it all. I don't really give a crap, right? Like I
Yeah.
need to get out of this job. So if your intensity level for you, Connor, like I probably peg you at like a 6, maybe a 7. Like you're doing good. You're not gonna go risk your whole life, and everything
No,
else.
not quite yet.
Yeah, like
Ask me in a year. Ask me in a
yeah,
year. It might change.
yeah. If I keep bugging you every day to do more stuff, maybe you'll be like, I need to get out of this job quicker. But I think like for somebody out there, like that's really the important part is like how intense is how important
Yep.
is that timeline for you, and how intense do you want to go after it will determine how far outside of your comfort zone you're willing to
Yeah,
go, and how much
that
time and
makes sense.
energy you're willing to put into it. So does that answer the question? I kind of went
Yeah,
long
it
there.
does. It kind of leads me into another question, kind of similar to kind of the same thing. But you know, you were talking about people having these big goals and being ambitious. Um, on my calls with people, you got to take this big vision, this big goal, and kind of bring it back. So, what does this look like? Day one today. What can I do to get this goal? So, walking that goal backwards,
Mm-hmm.
um, and making it actually, seem realistic. When you say $100 and 7 years. That
Mm-hmm.
just sounds absurd, right?
Yeah.
But you end up, backing it down. That's about $14 a year, give or
I just
take
had to get my
$15 a year.
calculator. You beat me to it.
Um,
Okay.
so then you're looking at, seven duplex if you're doing the duplex route. If you're going to 4 units, 6 units, you can
Yep.
make that, a little bit more attainable.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess where I'm getting at too is, when you first started, obviously your intensity level was a 9 and a 10. Um, did you just go diving in head first, or did you kind of, pick up 1, 2 deals and then all of a sudden then it starts snowballing? Or did you
Mm.
just hit the ground running? Or when did you see that snowball effect, I
Yeah,
guess?
no, that's such a great question because it sounds like, man, you went 0 to 103 years. Like that's fast for
Mm-hmm.
a lot of people. But it was the first year was slower, right? Like
Yep.
we did our first wholesale deal. We bought that duplex, and we did rent to own on our primary residence, like all within like a 3 week period. And it took 4 months leading up to that before we got there. So it's like, oh wow, you did all that within 3 weeks. Well, it was four months of conversations and looking at properties and learning and going to RIAs and going to meetups before we ever got to that point where we had the first one. And there was prior to that 4 months, there was about 4 or 5 months before that. That was pretty much just us listening to podcasts, education, going to the meetups, going to the networking stuff. Like I did all of that before I really started taking action. I took action in August of 2016. We got our first deal, or those three kind of mixed bag
Yep.
deals, in December and early January of 2017. So it was almost a year of just kind of working at it and then taking action for about 4 months before we got really some success rolling and some traction. So there was a lot of times when there was like, man, am I ever going to get a deal that I'll actually feel comfortable with?
Yep.
Is this ever going to work for me? Maybe I'm not cut out for this. There was a lot of self-doubt, a lot of negative talk going on. And then all of a sudden it was just like boom, 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 boom. And then we did another wholesale deal, I think in February of that year on a duplex. And then we bought a 4 unit. We were planning to burr. And again, I went back to my original goal at this point. And Carrie, my wife, she was doing our property management at the time. She did not want to manage 4 1-bedroom apartments. We had 2 kids, Leo and Kaylee at the time, and they were little, and she didn't want to be worried about that. Plus the duplex that we owned. So she's like, let's just try to sell it. And I still to this day, I wish we would have never sold it, but it helped us propel. We sold it for sale by owner. We made 25,000 on it, and I was like, hey, wait a minute. I'm making 6 figures at my job. I need to be making 6 figures to be able to leave. Well, if I just did like 4 of these a year, oh my gosh, that'll be a lot quicker than getting to 100 doors at 200 bucks. Like, let's do that. So then
Mm-hmm.
we ended up buying a bunch of flips. Some of them were MLS on the MLS deals, and you can still get deals on the MLS. Like you just got to offer the right price. It's the same thing. So we did a bunch of flips and that kind of thing. And then once we started getting the flips and the wholesale going, kind of like what you're seeing, like then once the cash was there, then I left my job, my full-time job. And then it was just like real estate 100%. And then we were picking up rental properties. People were bringing us some apartment deals back then, like there was kind of just a flurry of activity, but it took probably, it wasn't until 2 years in where we were really humming along at a pretty good clip. The
Yeah.
first year was a lot of get one, rehab it, either sell it or keep it. Next one, it was one at a time for the first 3 or 4 properties. And then after that, it was like, okay, we've got our who's now, as we say, and who, not how. We've got the who's that we've built the relationship with and the connections with. Now we can just start kind of rolling and move them over in the right buckets of the people that need to start working on these things or do whatever we need to do, property manage them or whatever. And we felt like we were able to clip along after that. So, yeah. So it took awesome. A little bit.
Yeah. And I think that's, something that I'm still wrapping my head around is, like I said, 100 doors, 7 years, it's about 14, 15 doors a year. But that doesn't mean this year I have to go out and get, 7 duplexes,
right.
That's the average. So, my first couple of years might be a little bit more slow rolling.
Yep.
But, once that snowball starts rolling down the hill, now all of a sudden I might get 20 units one year. I might get 30. Like, you just got to keep taking that first step, I feel like. And I feel like that's where I'm still working on it. I finally got my first duplex, but now I'm ready. I want to get a flip next, and then I want to get another duplex this year. Yep. So just failing forward and just going forward and moving forward, I feel like is huge in this industry.
100%. And I don't think, I think this is such a good conversation because if I was in your shoes, it can seem really overwhelming to try to go from 1 duplex to 100 doors. Like you said, like you start putting that pressure on yourself where you're like, man, I got to get 7 duplexes this year. And at the time we're recording this, it's almost June. You're like, man, I'm halfway through the year. I've got 1. I got to get 6 more. I got to get 1 a month now. How am I going to finance this thing? Who's going to fix it up? What if the appraisal comes in low? Like there's a lot of stuff that can start getting the chatter, and it can really actually work in the opposite direction for some people as it can shut them down and it can make them just do nothing at that point. They can completely give up on it. So this is such a good conversation for people out there listening to this. Don't let the big goal scare you, or if you feel like you're behind pace, just know that, like you said, if you've given yourself some runway of time, that's perfect because now it can be an average, right? Now, maybe next year you get 9 duplexes, and the year after that, you're doing 1 a month or something, and you're kind of catching up over time. Once you get your who's all put around you, the lenders, the contractors, the property managers, all that kind of stuff, some cash from some flips, you can then start to accelerate and let that snowball start to go downhill, catch back up on the goal. Yeah,
absolutely. So that's the other. I know you mentioned, who's. That's another thing about networking too, is learning from other people's mistakes as well. I feel like that's helped me a lot too. You hear the story. Obviously, I'm still gonna run into something one day here, but you hear the stories, and I think that's my favorite part about networking is I like to call learning the easier way. And instead of taking a big hit on a flip or buying something that you didn't see, or surround yourself with people that have done it, have seen it, so you can ask them questions and they can tell you their stories and give you their advice because they've had to learn the hard way. So, now they're willing to help other people out. That's what I love about real estate too, is there's enough deals to go around. Everyone's willing to help. Everyone's willing to share. No one's really selfish, especially, if they are, you'll know that they're selfish and they'll have a bad name for themselves. So,
Well, I think what's interesting, Connor, about that is this is the feedback I hear from people who are doing networking events in other parts of the state. So we're based in Northeast Wisconsin. So if you're listening to this in Milwaukee, Madison, Eau Claire, somewhere else around the state, I can't speak for that. I haven't gone to a lot of networking events there recently. I went to a few Milwaukee ones a few years ago and a good experience. But from what I hear is we have a pretty unique thing in Northeast Wisconsin that everybody's willing to help and share. Might not be the case if you're listening to some of those other areas where the people that you have to go to are maybe they're keeping the cards to the chest a little bit more. Then maybe you have to, I talked about this on another episode. Maybe you have to be the thermostat. Maybe you have to be the one to start the group, start the meetup, start the whatever it is. It can be as easy. Our first meetup we ever started was a Facebook event that we just put it out there and invited a bunch of people to come and talk about real estate at a bar. That was it. And we got name tags. People came in. We had a little sign that said real estate meetup, come here. They came over. We got their name, their information. We gave them a name tag, and there was no pressure. There was nothing for sale. It was literally just being the person to start the event. And now we've built a culture of sharing and abundance. And, people aren't going to give away their trade secrets at these things, but they're going to help you. If you come up and you ask them questions about certain things and you're genuinely curious and you're you're trying to learn from them. People love talking about themselves, so they'll tell you everything for the most part, as much as they feel comfortable. But most people are willing to help and share, and everybody started where you are, Connor.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe not as young, like you said. We all wish we started earlier, uh, but everybody was once somebody who had no properties. So I think that's really important. When sometimes people can get a pretty big head, they can get out and think that their stuff doesn't stink. And they have to remember at one point they didn't know anything. They were
Yep.
a baby in this game, and somebody helped them. Somebody gave them some education. Somebody gave them a nugget that got them started. Nobody can be out there and say I'm self-made. Nobody helped me get my real estate portfolio. You had help along the way. I don't care what you say. Maybe it was a lender that you were working with that was giving you feedback on your deals or something. Somebody was helping you. So I
Yeah.
think in our area, it's a pretty common thing to get people that are willing to help and love talking real estate and just want to see people succeed. It may not be as common in other parts, but then you just have to be the person to go do it and start it out.
Mm-hmm. And I feel like a lot of people my age too sometimes feel like they don't bring value to, conversations, but, putting yourself out there, just, offer to buy someone lunch, offer to, help them on a flip,
Oof.
just build a reputation. It doesn't have to be, necessarily helping them out knowledge wise,
Mm-hmm.
but buy them a lunch, take them out for a drink, take them golfing, do the little things that just kind of, put you in the same areas with them. And,
Mm-hmm.
you're still helping them out then. I think I helped Reese with one of his rentals. And all I asked for was a 6-pack of beer when I was there helping him. So,
Yeah.
didn't ask for money. Just wanted to, get into the nitty gritty of it. All we did was hang doors and, do some little things. But,
Yeah.
it's still nice to get your foot out there and, see projects that you're not invested in, but it builds that knowledge without, having to, buy one right away. So if you're not ready to buy one, or, you're still working on getting your lending, doesn't hurt to, start. I always hear people that are like, oh, I'm not ready yet. I need to wait a year. Well, maybe that's the case for buying something, but at least put a foot forward. Go to
Yeah.
networking events still. Go help people out. Get lending set up, because you never know when that deal is going to come across the table, and also you're like, you know what, I can't pass that one up. So I
You
think
never.
that's
Yeah.
something that I just wanted to throw out there. Is like, even though you're young, maybe you don't have anything to offer. There's still a way to make yourself valuable and still be productive in
Yeah.
some way, shape, or form.
Yeah, man, that's so good. You never, first of all, one point you said you never want to pass a good deal just because you don't have financing set up. That is a huge mistake. I see people, especially when you're in your shoes, Connor. The easy thing to do would be like, oh, I got my one. All my money's tied up over here. I'm out of the game for a while, right? All of a sudden, because you were networking, because you were putting stuff out on your social media, people are like, oh man, Kate Connor, I got my grandma had to go to assisted living and her house needs a lot of work. Would you want to buy it? And you're like, yeah, but I don't have any money lined up. All my money's tied up. Never want to be in that position. So we talk a lot about, we have a course called Burr for Beginners. In that course, we talk about having multiple buckets of money. You want to have multiple options to be able to dip into at any point, whether that's a hard money lender, private lender, HELOCs, commercial lenders, community banks, all that stuff. You want to have a bunch of different options to be able to pull from. The other thing I think, Connor, that I think as you were talking, I'm like, man, that is such good advice for, especially for younger people wanting to get in the game. We obviously are consistently hiring people. And with younger people, one of the things I think that I noticed is sometimes if they have an interest in being in real estate, but they want a job, they get short sighted on the salary or on the
Mm-hmm.
hourly rate. We're hiring, some young people. We've been interviewing some young people for our rental portfolio business, and one of the things is like, hey, we're going to help you build your own real estate portfolio, and you're going to learn a ton. And just like you said, Connor, think about this: you gave yourself a $30,000 bonus in equity, probably a
Mm-hmm.
lot faster than you ever would have if you were trying to do it on your own versus working in the industry every single day. So there's a lot of other benefits that hopefully young people can see by just, hey, maybe I'll work for free for a while for you just to show I can do this and I want to learn and I want to do this stuff. Hey, down the road, maybe you can help me build my portfolio.
Yeah.
Something like that,
Well,
right?
hey man, I look at it this way too. I went to college. I paid my, nice little check for my piece of paper. You know, you're paying for an education. If you can get an education and, get paid, maybe it's not as much as you want, but you're learning a lot and it's going to put you in a better position a year from now, 2 years from now. You got to factor that into your quote unquote income.
For sure.
Um, at least that's the way I look at it. I feel like a lot of people, knowledge is just as important as money. If you have all the money in the world, but you don't know what to do with it, it's not very helpful. It's just pieces of paper.
Right.
I mean, obviously you can buy stuff, you can do stuff, but Being able to pair your money with, knowledge is huge. So if you're making more money, but you have nowhere to put it, now, if I was 24 and didn't work here and I was making more money and I was, but I had nowhere to put it, it's not the same because now I'm looking in the long run of appreciation, building equity, that one duplex that I got, I mean, I got 30K equity day one, but what's that duplex going to look like, 10 years down the road, 20 years down the road, 30 years down the road? Um, so I guess just changing your mindset is huge. Maybe I look at it differently than most people, but I would encourage, especially when you're young, you have your whole life to make money, learn now because, the sooner you learn, the better.
Yeah, for sure. When I was 24, dude, I went out and I bought, or 22, I graduated college, got my first big boy job. I went out and I bought a new vehicle. Stupid, like really dumb idea. I wish I would have bought a rental at that time instead of some car that just appreciated. It was a dumb idea. But that's what I think. You see this a lot with professional athletes, right? These young guys, 22 years old, they go get paid all this money. They go, I'll buy some Rolls Royce thing or whatever, instead of like, man, I'm gonna take this paycheck, I'm gonna go buy a big old thing of real estate and just let that baby pay me. That takes all the pressure off their NFL career or their NBA career. If tanks or they're only in for a couple of years, well, they used all that cash, but they don't think like that, when you're young. So,
yes. But I think
I don't blame them. I probably would have done the same damn thing when I was that age.
Yeah. I mean, there's two types of people though too. Not everyone. I'll be honest. Not everyone is built for real estate.
Very true.
If you're here listening to this, I mean, you're already taking a step. So I'd assume that you're at least somewhat motivated and ready to roll. So, but just not everyone. It's not cut out for everyone. If you're not motivated, if you're comfortable, working your 40 hours until you're 65, 70, then maybe real estate's not for you. If there's no fire under you and no goal behind it, it's not easy. I mean, I just started and, I haven't seen half the stuff that people have. But I can already tell you it's not easy. It's going to be a grind. So I guess, also you got to have that why behind your goals. You can't just have a goal of 100 doors just because I want to be rich. You can be rich doing a lot of other things. So there's got to be a goal behind it.
Yeah, 100%, dude. Well, Connor, this has been awesome, dude. You got to get back to work. That's what
we could talk all day, Corey. We could talk all day.
That's true. Before we go, though, we always ask, as you know, the question and reason we ask this, we have people outside of the state that are thinking of investing in Wisconsin or want to learn more about Wisconsin. So we love talking about the great state. Tell us a little bit, Connor, favorite Wisconsin tradition or place to visit here in this great state?
Ooh, that's tough. My favorite, I don't think I have a favorite Wisconsin tradition, but my favorite part about living in Wisconsin is I'm from Green Bay. So going to Lambeau Field, I try to go to 3-4 games a year. So that's going to be one of my favorite things to do. And then also going up north fishing. There's good muskie fishing here. So, that's got to be, up there too. And cheese curds. Can never complain about cheese curds.
No, you can't. Cheese curds are phenomenal here.
What are your favorite things, Corey?
Man, you just named them all. I think you pretty much just knocked them out of the park.
I think I just named Wisconsin. That's basically anyone that doesn't live in Wisconsin, they think of Packers and muskie and cheese curds.
Yeah. And one other thing I think is a favorite tradition of mine, cribbage. At least our family, cribbage.
Oh, that's actually sheephead and cribbage. I'll throw out my little word to my grandma here. She taught me how to play cribbage and sheephead when I was little. So
yeah,
keeping the Wisconsin tradition alive.
I still don't understand sheephead, but I do understand cribbage. A lot of variations that I've learned over the few years. There's Canadian cribbage. There's cross cribbage.
I've played a couple of them.
Regular cribbage. We also have.
We talked about this one day. I think that was like almost a year ago when I first started. We talked about cribbage, and I think you're ducking because we still haven't played.
We gotta, dude. I will crush you, and we'll live stream it for everybody. Maybe
I'll live stream it for everyone.
Live stream that cribbage crush. I'm sure it'll be just really edge of the seat type of things. Watching two guys play an old man's game.
I have to put it in like times 10.
Yeah,
just
time lapse it. You gotta bust it out. But we also have a game we invented, Carrie and I, called Raymond's Rules Cribbage. So you know how your jack normally is a 1-pointer. We really twist it up. We make it worth 4 points if you get down. But it makes you rethink what you're going to toss away and what you're going to keep in your hand and what you're going to throw in your partner's crib. If you have no idea what we're talking about, you probably need to be investing in Wisconsin. That's all there is to it. You just got to get here more and invest here. So, all seriousness, guys, thanks for tuning in to another episode here. This has been awesome, Connor. I think this has been great for hopefully a lot of people new or experienced. I think everybody could take away a lot of things. I know I certainly did. If you guys are looking to get deals, we talked about getting on the buyers list at the start of this. You can go to the website and put your information in on the homepage. If you're not ready to get deals and you're just kind of like, hey, man, what is this real estate thing? I'm starting to listen to the podcast. It sounds interesting. Can you help me with my goals and figure that out? Just go on the site and put in the contact form. And either myself, Connor, or Reese from our team will give you a call. We'll have a conversation with you. We'll figure out, if going down this path makes sense for you and how to get you started. And we'd love to have that conversation with you and help you move into this fun game of real estate. And if you have cribbage questions too, we can answer those as well.
Happy to answer those.
Yeah. As we said earlier, guys, share the episode. Again, we love getting more people to listen to this. It helps us get on more guests and bring more content for you guys, but it also really helps you guys. As we said, you're sharing this. You're helping somebody else out there who maybe is not familiar with real estate investing or has thought about it forever. You might be the catalyst to change their life. And it's going to let people know what you do and should bring you more deals, lenders, all that sort of thing. So share the episode, guys, and keep tuning in. We'll see you on the next episode.